Buenas tardes. Very good to be back in Colombia. I was here, as this young lady was reminding me, 15 years ago as minister in the government of India at that time. And I had some very good meetings on that occasion with your president and foreign minister in those days. But I have not been back to Colombia in the 15 years since. So it is very satisfying to be back with you again today. Though the circumstances that bring us here are not particularly happy ones. India suffered a grievous terrorist attack on the 22nd of April, when 26 holidaymakers, tourists in our northern territory of Jammu and Kashmir, were gunned down in cold blood by terrorists from across the border in Pakistan. These people actually even asked the religion of the people they were accosting before shooting them dead. And it was a ruthless, cold-blooded, awful massacre of innocent people. When this happened, of course, the world rose up to condemn the terrorist attack, but that was as far as it went. There was no action taken, not even by the country where these people had emerged from, namely Pakistan. Nobody was arrested. There was no attempt at any prosecution. India decided that this kind of outrage could not go unpunished. And therefore, on the 7th of May, India chose to launch strikes against known terror bases, headquarters and launch pads of organizations listed as terror organizations by the United Nations Sanctions Committee on Terrorism, the 1267 Committee, and also on the wanted list, the designated terror list of the United States government. So we were not targeting any Pakistani government institutions, any Pakistani civilian institutions, or even any Pakistani military institutions. We only attacked terror bases. And we did so with a great deal of precision, so much so that in one particular example, we struck a very specific building inside the rather large campus of a particular terrorist organization. And this kind of precision was meant to drive home a very specific message. The message was that if you think you can come and kill our civilians and get away with impunity, that is not going to happen. You will pay a price. At the same time, we took care to conduct these strikes at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:05 to 1:30, so there would be no civilians around and there would be minimal risk of collateral damage. And because of the care with which we had avoided any other target, we were quite confident that the only victims of these attacks would be people located in or residing in these terror headquarters, and indeed so it proved. In fact, the next day there was a well-publicized funeral of one of the terrorists on the sanctions list, and you will be interested to see that that funeral was attended by uniformed senior military and police personnel from Pakistan. That is the extent of complicity that we are seeing between the terrorists who perpetrate crimes of this nature and those who finance, guide, train, arm, and equip them, and who provide them safe haven to continue their training and their other awful deeds. This was then followed by an 88-hour conflict. I will not call it a war, but during that conflict, the Pakistanis shelled indiscriminately. They killed 19 civilians in the district of Poonch by hitting, amongst other things, a Gurudwara, a Sikh temple, a convent of the Carmelites of Mother Mary. They hit civilian homes, they hit cars, residential areas. And in retaliation, India also shelled back. We have then been at the receiving end of a barrage of missiles and drones, which were blocked by our air defenses, and we in turn struck Pakistani military airfields. At the end of 88 hours of these exchanges of strikes, the Pakistanis asked for a cessation of fire, and India immediately agreed. And the reason we had agreed is from the very beginning we had said we had no intention of starting a protracted conflict. We just wanted to teach a lesson to the terrorists alone. And we had said to the Pakistanis, if you don't retaliate, we will not retaliate. If you stop, we will stop. And that's why the war was able to end as swiftly as it did. Now, I want to stress to you, Colombia has good relations with India. We have $1.5 billion of investment in this country, in Colombia, from India. We are a country that is interested and focused only in economic growth, in development, in the well-being and prosperity of our people. Not that many years ago, a large number of our people were still living below the poverty line. For us, the biggest challenge is bringing them into prosperity in the 21st century. We have no desire to be distracted by any trouble on our borders or any conflict. We are very happy to leave our neighbor Pakistan alone if they will leave us alone. Sadly, however, what we are seeing is that Pakistan is not content with the status quo. They seek something we have that we are not going to give them, and that is our territory in Kashmir. And given that, if Pakistan believes that by resorting to all means, including terrorism, in pursuit of a policy called the death by 1,000 cuts, well, India is not so easy to dispose of, and I can assure you that India will stand firm. We are a land of peace. In fact, we're looking forward to visiting one of the statues of Mahatma Gandhi in this lovely city of Bogota. I believe you have two. Mahatma Gandhi was the apostle of peace, of ahimsa and non-violence. But he was also the leader of our freedom struggle. He fought for freedom against British oppression. And he taught us that freedom also includes freedom from fear. That you cannot live in fear and hold your head high. And we are determined that the answer to terrorism will be so firm and decisive that the terrorists and those who facilitate them will have to think more than once before they embark on such a misadventure. The reason we have come to Colombia, and we are in the middle of a 5-country tour. We have been to Guyana and Panama. We're going to Brazil and then to the United States. The reason we are here in Colombia is to seek the sympathy and understanding of the people of Colombia and the government of Colombia, of the legislators, the diputados of Colombia, and of public opinion, the opinion leaders, those who think about world affairs. We want them to understand and to empathize with our plight. We know that Colombia has had a tragic history of enduring terrorist attacks as well. We deeply, deeply empathize and have always stood strongly with Colombia when it has suffered the depredations of terror. We seek the same understanding and the same response. Please stand with us, and please be aware that we are here not only to tell you what has already happened, but to also tell you, as friends, that if this happens again, we will once again act very, very strongly. It is important that people understand this. As you know, all of us in the world want to see peace. Whenever something happens, the immediate response of the world is peaceful solution, peace, calm, non-violence, dialogue. And that is our preference too. But you cannot talk peace with a gun pointed at your head. And that is our reality. We will respond to what has been done to us as we judge necessary. And as I say once again, we seek your understanding and support in our struggle and our fight against terrorism. I'll stop there. So many of you, I'm sure you have questions. I'll be very, very pleased to respond. Thank you, and Jai Hind. I'll certainly happy to turn to you later. Let me get a Colombian journalist first. Yes, sir. There's a mic coming.
¿Cuáles han sido las posiciones concretas del Ejecutivo colombiano? Es decir, ha habido una solidaridad, pero ¿qué otras posiciones concretas se han presentado? ¿Y de qué manera este tipo de ataques terroristas, en qué áreas afectaron más a la India? Serían básicamente esas preguntas. Gracias.
Thank you. I have to say that we were a little disappointed in the reaction of the Colombian government, which apparently expressed heartfelt condolences on the loss of lives in Pakistan after the Indian strikes, rather than sympathizing with the victims of terrorism. We will say to our friends in Colombia, there can be no equivalence between those who dispatch terrorists and those who resist them. There can be no equivalence between those who attack and those who defend. We are only exercising our right of self-defense, and if there is any misunderstanding here on this score, we are here to dispel any such misunderstanding. We're very happy to talk to Colombia in some detail about the circumstances. We have, as I said, very concrete proof. In fact, when this terrorist attack occurred, it was immediately claimed by an organization called the Resistance Front, which is a unit of the Lashkar-e-Toiba based in Muridke, Pakistan. There is no doubt that they reiterated this credit the next day. It is only after their handlers realized the damage this could do that they then deleted the claim 2 days later. But the claim has been made. There is no doubt as to where this came from. And we will reserve always the right to hit back. Just as Colombia has endured many terror attacks, so have we in India. We have endured a very large number of attacks for almost 4 decades. Frankly, it is now very well established that Pakistan has been breeding the monsters of terrorism for a very long time for their own purposes. We all know that when Osama bin Laden was being hunted around the world, it was Pakistan that gave him shelter. The Americans found him in a safe house in an army, near an army base in a cantonment city. In other words, they found him and killed him, the world's most wanted terrorist, in Pakistan, a country which sadly has incubated terrorism for some years now, for at least 4 decades now. And for this reason, we would like the government and people of Colombia to understand that there should be no equivalence. Lives lost, maybe lives lost, but the lives lost in India were those of tourists, of civilians, of nuns, of worshippers, of ordinary people. The lives that were lost in Pakistan were the lives of terrorists, well-known terrorists. There is a difference. On your second question as to where the damage was done this time overwhelmingly in the states bordering Pakistan, that is in Jammu and Kashmir. Also, I think they might turn this off, the sound is not. Also in 1 or 2 districts of our neighboring state of Punjab, which is right next door to Pakistan, and to somewhat lesser extent in the state of Rajasthan. In other words, the Pakistani shelling was particularly affecting our border states, and these states took the burden of having to thwart the missiles. But we were well prepared to defend these states. These are our border states. We defend them well, and we were able to prevent any significant loss of life. There was some property damage, considerable property damage in some places. But it was only in Kashmir that lives were lost. First 26 on the 22nd of April, and then further 19 on the 8th of May. And that is, for us, 45 lives too many. There are still 59 people in hospital, or they were when we left India a week ago. It's a very, very serious situation. There was also, I would say, my friend, an intention on the part of the terrorists to provoke a negative reaction in India against our brothers and sisters from the Muslim community. The terrorists specifically asked if people were Hindu or non-Muslim before shooting them dead. There were 25 Hindus, one of them from Nepal, and one Christian who was shot dead. In addition, of course, the shells killed Sikhs and Christians as well. But I say this to you, that India very proudly stayed united. There were some brief moments of anger, as you can understand, in every society, but very quickly, India rallied around the unity that is embodied in our country's constitution and the national flag, and we stayed as one voice. I should have mentioned at the very beginning of my remarks, let me do so now, that my colleagues and I represent 5 political parties in India, we represent 7 different states in India, and we represent different languages, different religions. We have 3 religions amongst the 7 of us. We are truly reflective of the diversity of India, whether it's linguistic diversity, political diversity, religious diversity. But we are united in the message we have brought to you in Colombia. Yes, ma'am.
¿Cómo imagina la India una hoja de ruta sostenible para la paz con Pakistán, dados los persistentes desafíos del terrorismo transfronterizo y la desconfianza política?
Madam, the answer is very simple. We have been saying for many, many years to Pakistan, take steps to dismantle the terror infrastructure in your country. Take steps to prosecute and arrest those people who have been identified with specific terror attacks. Please understand, madam, that we are talking about one notorious case, the killings in Mumbai in 2008, when as many as 170 ordinary people were gunned down by terrorists from Pakistan. One of them was captured alive. His identity could not be concealed. Pakistan could not deny his identity, and the rest of the plot unraveled. Detailed dossiers were provided. Western intelligence agencies had information. Both they and our intelligence people had recorded the chilling voice of the handler from Pakistan giving blow-by-blow instructions to the killers to shoot dead various civilians. So with all that evidence, we went to Pakistan, not just us, other countries, and said, you must prosecute these people. That happened in 2008. Today, 17 years later, there has been no successful prosecution, no conviction. Nobody associated with this awful crime has been punished by Pakistan. The only punishment was to the one terrorist we were able to capture. The others who conducted these crimes were gunned down in the act of putting down the terrorist action. So I will say to you that if Pakistan were to change its colors, if it were to deliberately now start taking action against known terrorists, if it were to shut down these headquarters that we have attacked, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Bahawalpur, the Harkatul Ansar, the Harkatul Mujahideen, all of these organizations created, spawned, financed by Pakistanis and by Pakistan itself, on their territory enjoying safe haven, training terrorists day after day, including many who have conducted terror attacks in Europe, who were trained in Pakistan. Unless this terror factory is shut down, there can be no meaningful dialogue, madam. And you may be right that the only sustainable solution will come through dialogue and peace. But as I said to you earlier, we cannot do that with a gun pointed to our heads. You put away the gun, you put away the bullets, then we will talk. But that means dismantling the terror infrastructure, and that, sadly, has not happened at all.
¿Qué papel juega China en la carrera armamentista de Pakistán, en su aviación, en una fuerza militar que parece que es apoyada por China?
Yes, sir, we are quite conscious of what you are saying. China supplies 81% of all Pakistani defense equipment. Defense is a polite word. Pakistani military equipment, much of it is not for defense, but for attack. We also know, and this is something which we respect, every sovereign country has the right to do this, that the single largest project in China's Belt and Road Initiative is in Pakistan, the so-called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is a corridor, a highway connecting China to a port in southwestern Pakistan that permits goods to be transported relatively quickly and economically to western China. So we are aware of that. And our concern is not with the rights of the Pakistani people to pursue development. Of course, they may do so, including with the partnership with China. Our quarrel is only with the perpetration of terror against us. If that will stop, the rest won't matter. We will pursue our own development, and we will happily leave Pakistan alone to pursue their development. With the blessings and help of China, no problem. But not when it comes to terrorism. Yes, certainly. My colleague, Milind Deora, Member of Parliament from Bombay, from Mumbai, will say a few words.
Yes, it's on.
Buenas tardes. Firstly, this is my first visit to your beautiful country, Colombia. And when I think of your country, I also think of the great cultural connect that India and the world has with Colombia. Particularly the author, Gabriela Garcia Marquez, who had a very close affinity to India. He visited India, I think, in the early 80s with Fidel Castro, and he developed a very strong affinity to India. And in fact, as I'm sure our chairman would also know as an author himself, 100 Years of Solitude was translated into Sanskrit and remains one of the most definitive, iconic books in India even today. So it's very important for us because we share this deep cultural connect. For the younger members on this days, moving beyond Gabriel Garcia Marquez, there's also a connection with the international artist Shakira. And in that sense, everyone loves Shakira in India, that's true. So there is a very deep cultural connect that we have. We have a very strong and growing economic connect. Our bilateral trade today is at almost about $5 billion. And most of that involves imports from Colombia to India. In fact, we import more from Colombia than we export to this country. And we really believe, and the message we want to bring from India is that we see great economic partnership and great economic potential between the two nations in the areas of infrastructure. We import some natural resources from Colombia, but being able to export pharmaceuticals, being able to help the Colombian people with our strengths in information technology, financial inclusion, and pharmaceuticals is also a message we felt we wanted to bring to you. As the chairman of our delegation rightly pointed out, while the terrorism that we encounter is perhaps different from terrorism encountered in this part of the world, I would just like to say that as the few of us who've been following Colombian politics and are aware of the 80s when you had the Palace of Justice siege, a long-standing, decade-long battle with the FARC rebels, India has always, regardless of which party is in power, expressed solidarity with the Colombian people and with the Colombian government. And that's something which we've come here to seek from the people of Colombia through the media and directly with the government of Colombia. So I wanted to add these points in addition to what the chairman has already outlined, that besides the issue of terrorism, which as I said, there are fundamental differences, while you have faced some form of guerrilla warfare, which we have also encountered and continue to encounter in some parts of India with what's called Naxalism or left-wing extremism. With Pakistan, we're facing a very different kind of terrorism. This is, as the image rightly illustrates, it's pure state-sponsored terrorism. And that is the distinction, that is the message we wanted to bring from the people of India to you, that we want to strengthen these cultural connections, we want to strengthen these economic connections, and we want to strengthen the mutual respect for the people of Colombia and India who have been victims and continue to be victims of terrorism. Thank you.
Thank you, Milan. Well said. Yes, we endorse that. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Mario Bedoya from Documentatio. Some international media says that the quick cease of hostilities between the two nations was mainly because of United States intervention. If this was true, how can you describe the intervention of Mr. Trump's administration?
Look, we can only speak to the contacts that our government had. We received a number of phone calls from senior United States officials and also from senior officials of other countries, of France, of UAE, of Saudi Arabia, and so on. And the message we gave to all these countries was exactly the same. We are not interested in war. We were just conducting retribution for a terrorist attack. If they stop, we stop. If that message was then in turn conveyed by such countries to Pakistan, it may well have had an effect in persuading Pakistan to stop, knowing that their stopping would also mean India would stop. So it's possible that that's what happened. But certainly there was no sort of active process of mediation that we are aware of, certainly nothing involving us, because we never intended to begin with, from the very first day when the first terror strikes, the anti-terror strikes took place on the night of the 7th of May, the next morning we gave a public briefing to the world, televised, saying that we have no desire to prolong this. If Pakistan retaliates, we will retaliate. If Pakistan stops, we will stop. That was our consistent position every day. So there was no change. They stopped, we decided to stop. We are not the belligerent power in this particular equation, Mario. Yes, Aisha.
So this is Ayush Shirwal from ANI. I just have one question. You had a very successful visit to Guyana and Panama, and the countries gave you a very strong word of support against terrorism and also against countries supporting terrorism. What are your expectations from Colombia, given the fact that Colombia is expected to be a part of the United Nations Security Council from next year, where Pakistan is already a non-permanent member?
Well, we certainly wish Colombia all the best in its service on the premier body for peace and security of the United Nations. We understand that Colombia is contesting unopposed at the moment, and assuming that status continues, then it will be elected without any problem. And I do want to say that we would be very, very happy to be in regular dialogue with Colombia during its service in the Council on all international matters affecting us. On the question of our expectations from this visit, as I said at the beginning, Ayushi, we are here looking for understanding. We want Colombia, the government and people of Colombia, the Parliament of Colombia, the think tanks and idea makers and shapers of Colombia to understand what we have just been through. And if they have that understanding, we are confident we will have their sympathy and support, which we also hope to get. But first we need to understand, because we have the impression that perhaps the situation was not fully understood when that one statement came out after the Indian attacks began. Understanding is extremely important for us. We are a country which really has been a force for constructive progress in the world. We are proud of our contributions to the United Nations in areas like peacekeeping and development and fighting the environment, all sorts of things. India has never been a country that wishes to be seen in the context of war and terror. This has been inflicted upon us, and we are simply not going to take it lying down. That's what we want people to understand. And we certainly hope that other governments will tell those who give safe haven and protection to terrorists to stop doing so. That would be very helpful indeed as well, in the Security Council or outside it. Yes, of course, sir. Tejasvi Surya, Member of Parliament from Bangalore.
Thank you, Chairman. Our very first impression about Colombia and India relationship, we were discussing amongst ourselves, especially after the briefing by our ambassador, is that there is immense potential for collaboration and trade between the two nations. Just as we exited from the airport today, we were welcomed by a large holding of a software company from India, Zoho Corporation, which is very actively working here in Colombia. We also learned that Colombia is the second largest market for Indian two-wheelers outside of India. Most of our two-wheeler automobile brands, whether it is Bajaj, whether it is Hero, whether it is TVS, all of them are the favorite two-wheeler brands here in Colombia.
Royal Enfield.
Royal Enfield. And just yesterday I was talking to two very large electric vehicle two-wheeler manufacturers based in India. Because as you are aware today, India is the largest manufacturer of electric two-wheelers in the world. And they are extremely keen to expand their operations and also make investments in manufacturing in this part of the world to cater not just to the immediate Colombian market, but to the larger Latin American market as well. Therefore, the message that we are taking back from here to our respective constituencies, respective states, is that Colombia offers massive economic opportunities and potential for Indian companies. The relationship will only further strengthen, and of course, with Colombia's election to the Security Council, we hope it will be further strengthened by the understanding of the security challenges that India is facing in our immediate geography. Thank you.
Thank you, Tejasvi. Any other questions or clarifications we can give? Yes, sir.
Gracias. Muchas gracias, bienvenidos. Somos Yulder y Chris, en los expertos hablamos de sostenibilidad. En Colombia andamos en Royal Enfield, así que damos fe de su calidad. La pregunta es, ¿cómo está el tejido empresarial en la India en cuestión de sostenibilidad? ¿En qué etapa están? Todo lo que tenga que ver con sostenibilidad. Buenas prácticas, cómo están las empresas, cómo se están comportando, cómo están contratando. todo lo bueno que esté pasando.
Thank you. We very much share your concern with sustainability. I'm very proud to say that India co-founded the International Solar Alliance, for example, which has now got members from countries on every continent in order to promote the adoption of solar energy, which is far more sustainable than other kinds of energy. And we're trying to promote that and move it along. And I'm very pleased to say, as far as I'm aware, Colombia is a member of the Solar Alliance? No? Not yet. Well, we hope they will consider it. So entrepreneurs and businesses in India are conscious of this problem. At the same time, I do want to stress that we recognize this is a challenge for the whole world, and our own contributions are only a small part of what needs to be done. We are still, to be honest, a developing country. There are still many of our citizens who cannot take for granted that they can flick a switch on the wall and have their rooms flooded with light. Electricity still has to be generated. Fundamental development work still needs to reach our farthest villages. So there is ongoing progress, and that will require energy as well. We are trying nonetheless to promote alternative energy in every area. India is seeking to become a world leader in green hydrogen, for example. India has been promoting Solar Alliance. India has also attempted, as my colleague from Bangalore mentioned, to really develop its electric vehicle industry, and we are already leading very well in two-wheelers. We're not so much ahead in four-wheelers, but the time will come, because this is a commitment that India has made for some years now to turn our development work into such a sustainable direction that we will be totally carbon neutral by 2070. It's a long and challenging process. Remember that we found ourselves in 1947, when the British left, with 90% of our population living below the poverty line. We had a huge task ahead of us, and we have made some progress in all these 75 years. We have grown and developed our country. Some of it, I agree with you, has not been as friendly to the environment as would be desirable. But we are not second to anybody else in our consciousness of the importance of the environment and of sustainable practices. Would any of my colleagues wish to add to that? Yes, yes, Shashank, and then Tejasvi.
I think there's a lot to learn from countries like India, not the only ones. Because if you look at the per capita carbon emission that we have, it's dramatically lower than either China or USA. And therefore, if you look at the carbon mountain, as these countries have developed, they've gone up the carbon mountain, 8 tons, 9 tons in China, USA went up to 21 tons, has come down to 15 tons using solar technologies and other sustainable methods. So I think there's a great deal of learning that both Colombia and India can share in this matter. And as Tejasvi said earlier, we have a very strong electrical scooter industry, but it's also the decentralized energy solutions they're making. So it goes beyond energy. I think it's about the decentralized way of living, decentralized way of development, which is starkly in contrast to many of the countries which are trying to take a path which is centralized. So I think there are two discussions to be had between our two great nations, one of which is about how do we not climb up the carbon mountain, but drill through it, so to speak. And second is, energy is a manifestation of a way of life. And if that way of life is decentralized, then perhaps both Colombia and India can collaborate on that, perhaps starting with the Solar Alliance.
Tejasvi.
Gracias. Una pregunta más.
I'll just compliment what the leader of our delegation and Honorable MP Shashi. Like you're aware, we are in a developing stage in our economy, in our growth. Yet our Prime Minister has declared for our country a very ambitious net zero target by 2070. And it is with great pride that I want to share with all of you that close to 30%, 40% of our renewable energy targets, which we were supposed to meet by 2030, we have already met in 2024-2025. The investment in particular in harnessing solar energy in India is something phenomenal, because today India has some of the largest solar parks in the world. In addition to that, the Prime Minister has also been a champion of an initiative called Mission Life, which is to encourage small but important lifestyle changes that all of us can incorporate in our daily lives, which will have a tremendous impact in the overall scheme of things. So whether it is saying no to one-time use plastics, whether it is being conscious about fast consumer fashion, whether it is being conscious about the fertilizers that go into production of our food, and to management of our groundwater in our cities. Mission Life is a very comprehensive approach to bring individual actions in a more conscious manner to a collective scale, so that India achieves the net zero target by 2070. Also, over the last few years, the country has started very structured work in building a climate taxonomy for the first time in India. And once that climate taxonomy structure is put in place, it is further going to strengthen the country's efforts towards addressing climate change and enforcing sustainable development. Thank you, sir.
En términos diplomáticos, tengo yo una pregunta. En términos diplomáticos, ¿cómo se encuentra el Tratado de las Aguas del Indo con Pakistán en este momento?
Indus Water Treaty, what is the status? Indus Water Treaty.
Indus Water Treaty.
What is the status of the treaty?
Madam, the Indus Waters Treaty was one that was offered by India to Pakistan in early 1960s in a spirit of goodwill and harmony. In fact, those words occur in the preamble of the treaty. Sadly, that goodwill has been repeatedly betrayed by the terrorist actions of the last 4 decades. Even though we have had terrorism and war inflicted on us, the treaty has remained in place. But this time, our government has placed the treaty in abeyance, which means it is in effect suspended. Its operations are suspended until such time as we get satisfactory indication from Pakistan that they are prepared to conduct themselves in that spirit of goodwill that is provided for in the preamble of the treaty. We are very conscious that we have been a generous neighbor when it comes to the operation of the treaty. We are an upper riparian state. We have given Pakistan very generously the waters that they are entitled to under the treaty, and we have not even used all the waters we are entitled to under the treaty. But the time for acting on the basis of goodwill unilaterally is frankly no longer with us. We feel that goodwill is a two-way street, and Pakistan must also show that it is capable of acting in good faith before we have an opportunity to resume the full operations of the treaty. Let me add one more thing. For several years now, even before this particular problem arose, India has been requesting dialogue with Pakistan on the treaty because of numerous factors that have developed since the treaty was concluded 65 years ago. One very important factor is climate change. Global warming has meant that the glaciers in the Himalayas are melting. There will soon be an increase in water flow, but it will then be followed with a reduction in water flow as the glaciers change. We need to talk about this and take measures and steps for it. Secondly, there has been significant demographic change. The usage of water in Pakistan is, broadly speaking, now unsustainable because of the number of people drawing water from the Indus. there has also been technological change. The restrictions placed in the treaty reflect the dam engineering technologies of the 1950s. Today, there are new sophisticated technologies available, which would make it possible for us to have modifications which do not harm anybody's interests, but which would enable both sides to have more water used. All of these things, India has been requesting dialogue with Pakistan under the provisions of the treaty, but Pakistan has refused to cooperate and talk to us. So we would suggest that Pakistan first take active steps to dismantle the infrastructure of terrorism and show the goodwill we're looking for. And second, that they also engage with us seriously at the level of experts on all these issues. But these are issues which certainly cannot be ignored with the passage of time. I think we seem to have exhausted your curiosity. Let me thank you all very, very much for having taken the trouble to come to us. I hope our message has been clear. My colleagues and I look forward to a very good visit to Colombia. We have a number of meetings this evening and tomorrow, including with the Vice Foreign Minister in the absence of the Foreign Minister, with the National Assembly of Colombia, and with many other opinion shakers, think tanks, and so on. I'm sure that you will all get more news of our discussions and conversations tomorrow, but we remain available through the embassy for any further clarifications. My colleagues can always be there to assist you, even if I'm tied up in anything else, so I'm very happy to leave them to you. I have an interview right now, I'm told, but my colleagues are willing to remain if any of you wish to continue to talk to them. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.